Back in 1857, the British Empire found itself facing the single biggest threat to its power in India. It was a massive uprising on a scale they had never seen before, and it came dangerously close to shattering their control completely. So today, let's break down the story of this incredibly complex event, the Indian Revolts of 1857. Now, on the surface, the story kicks off with a simple, powerful rumor. A rumor about rifle cartridges, something a lot of us have probably heard about before. But get this, that tiny spark lit a fire that would eventually topple the very last Mughal emperor, completely end the rule of the British East India Company, and most importantly, plant the seeds of a national spirit that would one day lead to independence. So, how on earth did a rumor about rifle cartridges blow up into a rebellion that nearly brought an empire to its knees? Let's dive in. Okay, to really get this, we're jumping right into the middle of the action. The morning of May 11th, 1857, in the great imperial city of Delhi. I mean, just look at how fast this all happened. One day, you have a mutiny in a town called Meerut. The very next morning, those same soldiers are in Delhi, marching on the Red Fort and appealing to the old Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah II. Now, this guy was basically just a figurehead living on a British pension with zero real power. But they convinced him, and just like that, a mutiny had a leader, a cause, and a capital city. But, an explosion this huge doesn't just come out of nowhere. To really understand what happened, we need to look at all the fuel that had been piling up for years, just waiting for a spark. And this is really the key thing to understand. This was never just a military problem. It was like two revolts happening at the exact same time. On one hand, you had the Sepoys, the Indian soldiers who were terrified their religion was under attack and were just fed up with low pay and constant discrimination. And on the other hand, you had the everyday people who were being absolutely crushed by taxes. Old noble families were losing their lands, and skilled craftsmen were going broke because of cheap British imports. And this quote from the rebels in Delhi, man, it just says it all. This wasn't just a vague feeling. They truly believed there was an organized plan to wipe out their faiths, both Hindu and Muslim, and force them all to become Christians. And that brings us to the actual trigger, right? The infamous Enfield rifle. The rumor was that the new paper cartridges were greased with beef and pig fat. For Hindus, the cow is sacred. For Muslims, the pig is unclean. And to load the rifle, you had to bite the cartridge open. To them, this was the ultimate proof, a deliberate plot to defile them and destroy their religion. And look, the anger wasn't just about religion. Think about this number, 75,000. That's how many soldiers in the Bengal army came from just one region, of. And when the British took over their homeland, they brought in these new tax systems that were financially destroying the soldiers' own families back in their villages. And that's exactly why the sepoy was called a peasant in uniform. His problems weren't separate from the people's problems. If his family was suffering, he was suffering. The army wasn't just joining a popular rebellion. In many ways, the army was the popular rebellion. All right, so every uprising needs leaders. Who were the people who actually stepped up to challenge what was then the most powerful empire in the world? Probably the most legendary leader to come out of this whole thing is Rani Lakshmibai, the Queen of Jhansi. What's interesting is that she wasn't some revolutionary from the start. Actually, she first tried to work with the British to protect her kingdom. But the British had this policy, the doctrine of lapse. It basically said if an Indian ruler died without a direct male heir, the British would just absorb their kingdom. They refused to recognize the Rani's adopted son and used this policy to annex her kingdom of Jhansi. And in doing so, they turned a potential ally into one of their fiercest enemies. Suddenly, she had absolutely nothing left to lose. And she was far from alone. You see a pattern here, right? The leadership was this coalition of the dispossessed. People like Nana Saheb, who was denied his father's pension, Kunor Singh, a 70-year-old landlord who'd had his estates taken away, Khan Bahadur, another guy from a royal line who'd lost everything. They were all fighting to get back what the British had taken from them personally. So you've got this huge uprising, you've got popular support, you've got these incredible leaders. It feels like they can't lose. And yet, they did. It was ultimately crushed. And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? With so much rage fueling this thing, with half the country in flames, why couldn't the rebels win? Well, one of the biggest reasons is, honestly, it's kind of shocking. The revolt didn't unite everyone, not even close. In fact, almost half of the East India Company's Indian soldiers stayed loyal to the British. They fought against their own countrymen, and they were absolutely critical in helping the British retake key cities like Delhi. And on top of that, the rebellion had some other major problems. There was no central command, no way to coordinate attacks between, say, Delhi and Kanpur. You had rebels with swords fighting an enemy with modern rifles and telegraphs for instant communication. Plus, a lot of very powerful Indian princes actually helped the British. In the end, the rebels were united by what they hated, foreign rule. But they had no single, clear vision for what should come next. So when the end came, it was fast, and the changes it brought were permanent. The British counterattack was just ruthless and incredibly effective. Delhi fell in September 1857. Bahadur Shah was captured, put on trial, and exiled to Burma, which officially ended the Mughal dynasty forever. Rani Lakshmibai died fighting, a hero's death on the battlefield. By 1859, it was all over. But, and this is so important, the story doesn't end with defeat. Even in failure, the revolt served this incredible purpose. It became a powerful symbol, a source of inspiration. It was the first real time that so many different people across India had come together to fight one enemy, creating this powerful memory of a shared struggle. The memory of 1857, its heroes, its martyrs, its patriotic fire, became the founding myth for the modern nation of India. It inspired generations of freedom fighters to come. And it leaves us with this incredible thought. How can a lost war become the very seed that leads to an empire's eventual downfall?